The winter wind cut through the city like a sharp blade, chilling every passerby who hurried along the sidewalks. Snow clung stubbornly to the curbs, blackened at the edges by car exhaust, and shop windows glowed with warm lights as if inviting people inside from the bitter cold. Among the rush of people that evening was a young man named Daniel, shoulders hunched, hands deep in his pockets, and his thoughts starker than the sky above him. Daniel had moved to the city with dreams of success, chasing opportunities that had once seemed so certain, but months had turned into years, and instead of the bright future he imagined, he found himself stuck in low-paying jobs, barely making rent, and feeling utterly invisible in the sea of strangers. That night, he had lost his job at the Café Tilde, copyright another blow in a long string of disappointments. His landlord had already threatened eviction, and he wasn't sure how he would even feed himself in the coming week. As he sat on a bench near the subway entrance, fighting back tears, a woman in her 50s stopped in front of him. She had a bag of groceries in one hand and a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. Daniel looked up, startled, when she asked gently, "Are you all right, dear?" Embarrassment burned in his cheeks. Strangers didn't usually ask questions like that here. "I'm fine," he muttered, forcing a weak smile, but she didn't walk away. She studied him for a moment, then placed her grocery bag on the bench. "You look hungry," she said softly. From her bag, she pulled out a loaf of bread and some fruit, placing them in his lap. "Take this. I have plenty at home." Daniel's throat tightened. He tried to refuse, stammering, "No, I can't." But she cut him off with a firm shake of her head. "Yes, you can. We're all human. Sometimes we just need a little help." It wasn't much, just bread and fruit, but it was the first kindness Daniel had received in months. His chest ached as he whispered, "Thank you." She smiled warmly, patted his shoulder, and walked away without asking for anything in return. That simple act of generosity planted a small spark of hope in him. The next day, while eating the bread she had given him, Daniel decided to walk through the park instead of sitting in his cramped apartment. As he wandered, he noticed an elderly man struggling with a bag of dog food almost as heavy as himself. The man's small terrier yanked excitedly at his feet, making the task even harder. Daniel hesitated, then stepped forward. "Do you need a hand, sir?" Relief flooded the old man's face. "Oh, yes, please. My back isn't what it used to be." Together, they carried the bag to the man's car. The terrier wagged its tail in approval, jumping around Daniel's legs. When they were done, the old man pulled a candy bar from his coat pocket and pressed it into Daniel's hand. "For your kindness," he said with a twinkle in his eye. Daniel laughed for the first time in weeks. It felt good, better than good, to help someone, even in such a small way. That night, lying in bed with the candy bar still unopened on his nightstand, Daniel thought about the woman with the groceries and the old man with the dog food. Both moments reminded him that kindness still existed in the world, even when everything else felt heavy and bleak. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe he could be part of spreading it. The next week brought more struggles. His eviction notice arrived, and he began to pack his things in cardboard boxes. With nowhere to go, he took to sleeping on a friend's couch, though he hated being a burden. Still, he carried the lessons of kindness with him, looking for small ways to pass them on. One afternoon, as he stood in line at a coffee shop with his last few dollars, he noticed a young mother fumbling with her wallet. She had two children tugging at her coat, and panic spread across her face when she realized she had left her debit card at home. The cashier looked impatient, the line behind them groaned, and the mother's eyes filled with embarrassment. Daniel felt an urge in his chest. Before he could second-guess himself, he stepped forward and said, "I'll cover her coffee." The mother turned to him, surprised. "Oh, no, you don't have to. It's okay," Daniel insisted. "Really?" She hesitated, then nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you. I promise I'll pay it forward." Daniel walked out of the shop with his own small coffee and a strange warmth that no hot drink could provide. As the weeks went by, Daniel noticed more opportunities like these, tiny cracks in the walls of daily life where kindness could slip through. He helped a lost tourist find her way to the museum. He gave his seat to an elderly woman on the bus. He picked up litter in the park when no one was watching. Each act, no matter how small, stitched him back together in ways he hadn't expected. Then came the night that truly restored his faith in humanity. It was late, and Daniel was walking home when he saw a man lying on the icy sidewalk. At first, he thought the man was just drunk, but as he got closer, he realized the stranger was injured, clutching his leg and groaning in pain. Dozens of people hurried past without stopping, their eyes averted, their pace quickened. Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't have money, he didn't have much stability himself, but he couldn't just leave the man there. Kneeling beside him, he asked, "Sir, are you okay? Can you move?" The man shook his head, teeth chattering. "I slipped a broken bar. I think my leg's broken." Without hesitation, Daniel pulled out his phone and called for an ambulance. He stayed with the man, talking to him, wrapping his thin jacket around the stranger's shoulders until help arrived. When the paramedics came, one of them clapped Daniel on the back and said, "Good job staying with him. You might have saved him from hypothermia tonight." As the ambulance drove away, Daniel stood alone on the sidewalk, shivering but strangely alive with a sense of purpose. He realized that kindness wasn't about how much you had, it was about what you were willing to give, even when you had little yourself. A few days later, Daniel received an unexpected phone call. The injured man he had helped wanted to thank him in person. They met at a cafe. Copyright, and Daniel learned that the man, whose name was Robert, was a local business owner. Moved by Daniel's compassion, Robert offered him a job at his small company. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work, and more than that, it was a chance to rebuild his life. Daniel accepted, and as months passed, his world slowly began to change. He found stability, saved enough to rent a modest apartment, and even began volunteering at a shelter once a week. Each time he served food to those in need, he remembered the woman who had shared her groceries with him on that cold night. Word of his kindness began to ripple outward. At the shelter, others were inspired by his story and started offering more of their own time. On the bus, he once overheard a woman telling her friend about the stranger who covered my coffee when I forgot my card. It was as though every small act had planted a seed, and now a garden of kindness was blooming in places he would never see. One summer afternoon, while leaving work, Daniel spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench of the woman who had given him bread months ago. He approached her, heart pounding. "Excuse me," he said softly. She looked up, surprised, then smiled as recognition lit her face. "You're the young man from that winter night." Daniel nodded. "Yes, I just wanted to thank you again. That small act changed everything for me. You reminded me that kindness still exists, and because of you, I tried to keep passing it on. It led me to new friends, a job, and a reason to believe again." Tears welled in her eyes. "Oh, dear, a broken bar. You've just given me the greatest gift to know it made a difference." They sat together for a while, sharing stories of kindness they had witnessed, marveling at how a single moment could ripple out into countless others. Daniel realized then that kindness wasn't just about restoring his faith in humanity, it was about being part of humanity, about weaving threads of compassion into a world that sometimes felt frayed and broken. And as long as even one person chose kindness, the fabric of hope would never fully unravel. When he walked away that evening, the city lights seemed brighter, the air warmer, and the faces of strangers somehow softer. He carried with him not only gratitude but also a quiet conviction that no matter how dark life became, kindness had the power to light the way. And perhaps that was the greatest act of all.